As Florence Starr Taylor's life skipped through the last century, her curious eye was caught by many things. The curve of a chair, a twist of hair, an expression, a moment, no greater or less than any other, but one she noticed and faithfully recorded. Just a moment she chose to capture on paper to call her own. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands of them.
She has this really incredible ability to capture this immediacy. You feel like you are right there.
A line, the edge of the figure, excited her.
Her ability to catch what she saw and put it on paper was unbelievable.
In doing so, she left for us a recorded history, both hers and ours. A history of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. A history of the changes in America through the 20th century. A history of what she saw, whatever she saw. And perhaps if we look closely enough between the lines, even a glimpse of who she was. Two accomplished artists, Linda Milan Ross and Carol Galligan, have been introduced to Florence Starr Taylor only by seeing her works. Linda got a chance to take a close look at Florence's sketchbooks from her early art school days.
I'm overwhelmed by these drawings. You know, I've always been impressed with her versatility and with her flexibility in terms of being able to move from one medium to another. I teach drawing, and most of my own work is drawing, pencil drawing, and charcoal. Seeing these books, I'm even more impressed than I ever have been. Her line quality's amazing. You know, she can represent some of the heaviest objects, some of the most massive forms, just with the most delicate lines. In many ways, and I'll go back to the immediacy here, I think she does remind me a lot of the great artist Daumier, in that, you know, you have a sense that when you look at her work, that even though she may only have a few lines down, that you are there, and there's just such a sense of presence there.
Carol's introduction to Florence Starr Taylor's work was by attending a retrospective of her life's work, crossing many mediums and eras.
The feeling just overwhelmed me, the simplicity. And yet, how can I say simplicity when it just encompassed everything an artist wants to accomplish in their work? By the time I got the third or fourth, I realized I was looking at really some masterworks. And that blew my mind. I'm a contemporary artist, and too often we artists want to say something unique. We want a splash of recognition for what we've done, something new and innovative. And I'm searching for that masterpiece when all she had to do was draw a bonnet. And that's what amazed me. And then with each piece, it got stronger and stronger. Then she got into color, watercolor, landscapes, portraits. And one led to the other, just like the unfolding of a scroll.
She's so fast. I know a lot of the poses that are here are ones that you would not be holding very long. She's able to get down, again, the essential gesture and attitude in a short time, and yet the mark making's beautiful. It's like she's able to completely focus on that subject, and there it is.
You know, I was walking this path, and this scroll was being unrolled for me. And each piece seemed to run into the other one. There was a whole story there about this wonderful woman.
I imagine she was a great conversationalist.
It would have been fun to actually be in her company.
You know, I think she probably had a very good intuition about what was making people tick.
She had that human element in everything she did. I think if she drew a tube of toothpaste, you know, I'd say, that's a funny tube of toothpaste. She kind of laughed at life in a way.
That was behind a lot of what she did. She laughed at most things that other people took seriously.
This is a winter of 1935. It was rather snowy, as I recall. And one day I drove past Hamilton Watch Company, which was on Columbia Avenue, and there was this lithe young woman painting on a sign in front of the Hamilton Watch Christmas display. So I stopped. I wanted to see what was going on. She had a heavy jacket, and she had laced up boots, and red hair and blue eyes. We had quite a nice chat. I was very well impressed with her, and then I drove on my way. That's the way I met Florence Taylor.
In 1904, Florence Starr Taylor met the world. She was born that year in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, to William and Annie Taylor. Her father sold business forms to large and small businesses in the region. Her mother was a homemaker. Florence was the oldest of 3 children and grew up with brother James and sister Madge in Lancaster City. And while some family members had a mild interest in music, there seemed to be nothing in this small family that foretold her interest in or her lifelong obsession with creating art.
And Flo was certainly the most unique person I've ever met within my family. I am not aware of anybody else in the family on either side that had the kind of interest that she had. She was definitely unique from that standpoint. She would be the surprise standout.
Perhaps her earliest love in childhood was the outdoors, and that passion would remain for a lifetime. But soon her imagination was captured by another. She was once asked in a newspaper interview to recall her first attempt at drawing. Florence replied,
"It was a fat fairy made on a blackboard. I thought it was so nice, I hated to erase it."
She had no need to worry. There would be many illustrations following it. By high school, she had already become a blossoming artist of note, as her high school yearbook would attest. It was her drawings that brought her 1920 yearbook to life. It was the first of many books she would illustrate, and it also contained the passage,
"Florence I Don't Know a Thing Taylor is one of the most brilliant girls in class, despite the fact that she keeps saying, 'I don't know a thing.' She can draw extremely well and in time will become a great artist."
Her talent had arrived, but as she was fond of saying, her life would not begin until the day she entered art school.
One of my advisors told me, "Florence, you'll never be anything but a butterfly." I can't be serious about anything because that's what she told me.
She was the original flower child. She was so beautiful inside and outside.
It was the era of the flapper, the roaring 20s, when Florence attended art school at the Pennsylvania Museum School of Industrial Art in Philadelphia. Drawing, painting, and modeling courses were mandatory. Textiles, pottery, wood carving, and metalwork were offered optionally. Her 3 jam-packed school sketchbooks chronicle her visits to the Philadelphia Zoo. Studies of the human form, hands, expression, architecture, and landscape.
These don't look like they're, coming off of a photograph or a painting or something else. You are there. You know she's working from life.
Interestingly, one is hard-pressed to find a sequence of weaker to stronger works. It would seem that Florence arrived at art school with formidable skill.
I knew that she went to the same school I went to. I think natural talent has to be the basis. I've known fellow students who had no talent and worked so hard, but it's like being a poet or a musician or an actor or a comedian. There has to be some seed that you're working with.
Upon graduating, Florence rounded out her formal art education with a scholarship with the famed artist Louis Comfort Tiffany. He believed all art was derived from nature, and he used lush greens and bright floral hues in his lavish stained glass works. It doesn't take much to draw the parallel between his color palette and hers as Florence expanded into the world of color work.
We are all born with certain talents, and she knew what hers was.
Florence would now take her talent to the workplace and begin a 60-year career as a professional artist.
the time that she was a young artist, there were no galleries here. An artist had to make his or her way.
She was a woman without any barriers. There was no stopping Florence, and I assume that when Florence went into the marketplace and she had made up her mind that she wanted to do that, there would be no one stopping her.
It was 1926, and Florence had already barreled her way onto the front pages of her hometown newspaper, the Lancaster Intelligencer Journal. She was the paper's full-time artist, and it was her work that heralded the value of new inventions, such as the telephone. Lancaster was now talking to California an average of once a week. And how about electricity? It could cool something that was hot and heat something that was cold. Her duties were varied in both style and content. She was asked to create political cartoons, sports illustrations, numerous advertisements, historical pieces, courtroom renderings, and local interest stories. She even contributed as a writer. News printing techniques were more primitive, and Florence's art served much the same role that photography does today. Her work for press printing needed to be bold and high contrast, and by its very nature less detailed than many of her other illustrations. But her fast style and versatility proved to be a perfect match for newspaper work.
I think she was a natural. Her muse was always there with her. I don't think she had to summon it. She would hold a pencil and she would just paint or draw. It was just a kind of like breathing for people.
But after just a few years, not surprisingly, Florence's need for independence took over, and she left to become a freelance artist, and from that point on would be her own boss.
Florence chose to be what she called a big fish in a little pond. She loved Lancaster. She spoke of the possibilities of going to New York, and she even had opportunities. There was an opportunity in Hollywood. There was an opportunity and could have gone to New York and tried to do what she could because she was a commercial artist and kept very busy. But she loved Lancaster.
Her client list was extensive and impressive. She was employed by many of the A-list companies in the region, and her ads made the pages of both local and national papers.
Oh, everyone knew Florence Taylor. Everyone knew her. And she was invited to every kind of affair there was, hoping that she would produce sketches, which she usually did, you know.
She was absolutely fabulous in her output.
It would seem that from this point on, her phenomenal output would be matched only by the limitless demand for it.
Art is my life.